Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Now, you might have noticed, but I like to race at the Nordschleife. And it's literally taken me years to get to a point where I feel competitive. And as you know, I drive a variety of different cars at the Nordschleife. And I often get people commenting saying, how do you drive so many different cars at the Nordschleife? Well, the truth of the matter is that the reference points I use in the GR86, for example, are the same as the ones that I would use in the Audi 90. I might even brake at exactly the same point in both cars. Yes, I'm going quicker in the Audi 90 GTO, but it's got better brakes. So the reference points for every car are very similar. It doesn't matter if it's the Nordschleife or Monza. You can use the same reference points for any car, any track. But I thought I would take you for a lap in replay mode, just try and talk about what I look for, what I use as my reference points, and the little things at the Nordschleife that can catch you out. But before we actually jump on track, a little reminder that if you do like this video or find it useful, please leave a like on this video, and if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. So, enough talking, let's jump on track. Right, before we get on with the guide, it's not a guide, I'm just giving you my pointers. I need to apologise for these. These are the worst headphones that I've ever bought in my life. They're just some cheapo ones that I bought for editing. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I know they look ridiculous. Now, I'm just going to use the replay just to cycle through what we need to cycle through. It's probably easier. And the reference points that I'm going to mention in this video can be used for any car. You just tweak them very, very slightly, but you can use the same reference points. So we'll fast forward this. So approaching the final turn, and what I look for on the right hand side, you can see this piece of white concrete on the right hand side there. When I see that come to view, I know I need to start braking just before it. You can see I'm just starting to apply the brakes there. And this is quite early. I could probably brake a little bit later and still make the turn, but I'm thinking about the exit to get a good run out so nobody gets a chance to overtake me down into turn one. So right over to the left, braking nice and early, get the car settled, get the car set up for this turn because it's important that you get quite close to that barrier there. You can see I wouldn't really want to be any closer than that, to be honest. That's as close as I like to get. A few people scrape it, but I don't like to scrape the barrier going around there. Now down to turn number one, right over to the right hand side. This is blind, and what I'm using is the crest of the hill or the end of the wall as my reference point. We're going to be braking probably just before there. Yeah, just on it there. I'm just starting to apply the brake. You've got to be very careful here because this is a crest, especially in cars that don't have any ABS. As your car goes over the crest, it's going to be a bit lighter. So you need to modulate the brakes. Be very, very careful. So gently on the brakes, over the crest of the hill, and then we're going to open it up and move slightly into the pit lane. Some people move right over there, but I don't think you need to. You see some people getting right over here. I don't ever really do that. I move over the white lines and that's about it. Now, quite a late apex, turn number one, and just here where the car is, there's a bit of a dip. If we just slow the replay down, just there's a dip. And that's when you want to be getting on the gas. Just as it hits that dip. You look at the inputs at the bottom, just as it hits the dip, I'm on the gas. When the suspension's compressed, that's when you're going to get the most traction. And then it's a run down to this section here. Again, all the reference points for every car are going to be the same. So looking at this 2 kilometer board on the left-hand side, and we're going to be just backing off. Slight bit of brake just to keep the weight over the front of the car. Nice and gentle around here. Because if you get a really bad run through here, that's going to compromise you going into the next section and leaves you wide open to an overtake. So we'll move over to the right hand side, and here I'm using this paint on the road as my reference point, and probably just before the end of the paint I'm going to start braking. Now this is very, very important here to get this right, because if you get this wrong, that's going to have a big impact all the way to here. you're going to be much, much slower all the way through there. So this first turn here sets up everything. So we're going to be braking, apexing this one quite late and getting the car right over to the left-hand side. You can see there, I'm right on the curb because we want to open up this right, because when we get round this right, nice and gently, we want the car back over to the right. We don't want to be washing all the way over to the left-hand side. We want to be moving the car back over to the right. And this is where it's all about flow. You can't rush this section here. If you do rush it, you're going to make a mistake. There's lots of changes of direction. We're going to be using the curbs. It's all about being smooth. Use the curb on the left, use the curb on the right, and then we're going to use the curb on the exit. Nice and smooth. If you watch the inputs, right the way from here, we're probably not on the gas. Maybe slightly, yes, slightly, but that's it. It's all about flow. All we want to do is keep the car moving, keep the momentum up all the way through that section. Using the curbs. You can use a bit more of this left-hand curb. You've got to be careful though with cars that are quite low, such as the Formula 4, like downforce cars, prototypes. Be careful of the curbs, especially the one on the exit there. If you get more than half of your car on there, they're quite high, you'll ground the car and you'll have no drive. Then we're going to be over to the left-hand side for this right-hander. Now this is a much more important turn than people realise, because in a lot of cars you're wide open after this turn for quite a long period of time. So I want to be right over to the left-hand side. And again, I'm braking quite early. You see a lot of people braking much later here. But I'm thinking about the exit, and I want the car pointing down the hill in a straight line as soon as I can. So we're going to be braking early and get the car pointing down the hill. I maybe turned in a little bit early there, actually. If you look at that, probably turning a bit later, but we're pointing in generally the right direction to open up the steering. So you can see there, the steering's pretty much open, and then we can point it right down the hill, because here, when we get on the gas, we don't really want to be lifting off it. We want to be staying on the gas. Over the curb, point it straight down and accelerate hard. Touch that curb on the left-hand side. You can get away with that in most cars. But then when we hit the gas there, we're not off it all the way down here. If this car had a bit more downforce, we'd probably be flat out around this double right-hander. Now here, the approach to, is it Flugplatz? Something Platz or Pats. You've got to be careful with this jump. Now you'll see here, we're probably airborne a tiny bit there, you can see. Let's get the camera controls up. Yeah, so you can see we are airborne. That's one thing you've got to be very careful of here, because obviously when you are airborne, you've got no steering, no drive, and no brakes. So be very, very careful. So we'll just run it back nice and gentle over here. If you need to keep the front of the car down, a little dab of brake just as you go over the crest of the hill. Yeah, you can see I did it there. Just keep the front of the car down. And then here, we want to be aiming for this first apex. Now, this is very, very important. And I use this access road on the left-hand side there as my reference point. I'm actually turning in before I get there. And it's really important to get on this apex. Maybe not using the curb that I'm using there. Ideally, you want to be kind of just on the inside, because it is cambered. There is a bit of a dip. And if you get it in that first apex, then you'll be able to get it back for the second. So really important. Hit the first apex. Not all that curb though. Hit the first apex. Keep the steering on. Keep turning right and get it back for the second apex. And again, this is flat out. Really important to nail that first apex. Fast forward this all the way down here. Again, there's a crest here that you need to be careful of. Depending on what car you've got, it will go light there. Now, for this fast left here, we're using this 5 board as our reference point. Just before there, we're going to be on the brakes. In this car, most cars are similar. You can't take this flat out in many cars. And then we're going to be on the brakes ever so slightly. I presume that's what I would think I would be doing. Yeah, just slightly there, just to get the weight over the front of the car. in here, I want to be getting the car onto the left-hand side and keeping it there because we want the car over to the left for the next right. And then back on the gas when I'm happy that we're over this little crest in the middle here. So we're just got to be careful for that. When it's over the crest, then we're back on the gas. You can see there. It's over the crest, then back on the gas. Moving over to the left-hand side. Now, you can see here faintly, we'll move it forward slightly. See it clearer there now. We've got a line that runs across the track with a change in road surface. That's what I use as my reference point. I usually get on the brakes just before or on that. You can see there, I'm just starting to apply the brakes now. And we're on pretty much, just over the line. There. That's where I brake. And we're going to be hard on the brakes on the left-hand side. And a lot of people think that you want to be taking a wider line, then swinging back round. But this is cambered on the inside. So a nice tight line, I found, is a little bit quicker around here. You can see there's a lovely camber to this corner. So nice and tight all the way around. Be very, very patient on the gas, because if you run wide here and you go on that curb, that is a really, really tall curb, and it doesn't take much for the car to get unsettled, or worst case, you lose your ground out and you lose drive on the wheels, and before you know it, you're in the barrier. So be very careful for that. So down the foxhole, just straight line this as much as you can. You can run over these curbs slightly, not a problem. Fastest part of the track, this, I think. No, not far off anyway. Now there's a big compression here, just there. Big compression. You can see sparks coming off the car there. Big compression. And then we're going to be moving the car over to the right-hand side. And here, you can see this sign here for the motorcycle. This all comes at you really, really quickly. So it's very, very hard to say you turn in at this point, you brake at this point. This is very much done on feel and just knowledge of the circuit. But move the car over to the right-hand side, and then we're going to be gently on the brakes, and we're going to be turning in here before we can actually see the apex. So we'll just run it forward. You can see there, I'm starting to turn left already, starting to turn left quite a lot, and the apex isn't in sight. And here you can get away with cutting over this curb. But be very careful. On other simulators, you can't do that, because this curb in real life now is a lot taller. I mean, in reality, I would want to be right over this curb. I missed it slightly here. I would normally be right over this curb, and it just makes the braking a little bit easier because you're a bit straighter. So don't be cutting this corner like this on any of the simulators, because you will be in the barrier on the right-hand side. And then here, it's just about getting the car slowed down nice and gradually. You can see that I'm hardly on the brakes. Nice and smooth. Keeping the car on the right-hand side, because we want the car in the middle of the circuit when we get around here. You don't want to be letting the car move over to the left. You want the car as far over to the right as you can. And I'm using this, I kind of picture it as a zebra crossing. That's my reference point. Just before there, we're going to be on the brakes, and we're going to be braking in a straight line heading towards the curb. And then we're going to be apexing this one super late. You can see how late we're apexing that turn. So you can see the turn starts there, but we're actually apexing it a little bit further on, because, again, the exit of this little section is much more important than the entry, because we are on the gas again, full throttle after this little section. So be very, very patient around here. A little bit of trail braking, just keep the weight over the front. And again here, don't rush the exit. Don't rush the exit here. It's really easy to do, and then you'll push wide on the high curb on the exit. So nice and patient, then on the gas, because we're flat out here. Quite a long section here where we're flat out. And then a really tricky left-hander. So you can see there, it's quite blind as you approach it. You can't see anything really. So when we get to this crest here in the center, that's when we're going to be starting to apply the brakes, getting off the gas, especially in cars that don't have lots of downforce. So here we're going to be gently on the brakes and then back on the gas. This is all about being smooth. Don't rush it. If you brake too late, you're going to unsettle the car and you're going to be on the grass on the right-hand side. So get the car settled nice and early. Just turn it in. Don't go on that curb because that is a bit of a monster. It's a really, really high curb. You can see the height of it there. Probably about a foot tall in real life. And then we're going to be moving the car back over to the right-hand side. Now, very tricky corner, this one. Really easy to over-rotate the car because we're still doing 200 kilometers an hour, 120 miles an hour. We're going to get the car slowed down for this tight left. And this is a bit of a late apex again, this one. Because again, we want to set up the right. So it's all about sacrificing the speed on entry to have a faster apex at the next turn. So apex this one quite late. Avoid the curbs if you can. And then down the hill to this double right. Now this is probably one of my most difficult corners on the circuit, this one, because we're going downhill. It's a bit harder to brake, a bit harder to get the car stopped. And there's a couple of ways you can take this one. You can either take it nice and tight all the way around the two, or you can let it drift a little bit wider than this and then cut it back for a second apex there. Mine's a bit of a hybrid there, so I hit the first apex, let it drift out, and then hit the second apex. Again, watch out for that curb on the exit. And we're running down to miss, hit, miss. Now, this left-right, really tricky. Again, it's all about not rushing this one, being really precise and just being smooth with your inputs on corner entry. You can see there, I'm just not really doing much. I'm just letting the car settle here in the compression. We actually hit that curb on the exit. That's really a good example, actually, of how not to do it. So we just rushed that because we're rushing because we had this guy behind us. It was putting a bit of pressure on at this point. But as long as the steering's straight, you can see there, it's not far off, and we straighten the steering up, you can get away with it. That would have made a good thumbnail, actually, for the video. But we got away with that one. But ideally, you want to be just glancing the apex here. We're probably on the gas. Yeah, we're full on the gas there at that point. We'd normally delay that slightly, keep the car over to the left to miss the curb on the right-hand side. Now here, it doesn't change where we are here. We're going to be using this end of this pavement here as our reference point. So just before that, we're going to be gently on the brakes, and this is miss, hit, miss. So this is 3 turns, and the idea is that you miss the first apex there, and then you hit the second one, kind of there, and then you miss the third one. So that is miss, hit, miss. So miss the first apex, hit the second apex, and miss the third apex. So if you think about it as one corner, the apex is just there. So if you want to separate it from 3 corners to 1, you can just use that middle curb as your apex. So again, just before the end of this pavement on the left-hand side, we're going to be on the brakes. Miss that one nice and gentle. You can see I'm holding a little bit of brake all the way around there. You've got to be so patient. I see so many people get on the gas here far too early, and it pushes the car right out wide because there's a bit of a crest there, you can see, on exit. Just there, there's a bit of a crest. Car goes light and runs over on the grass. Now, this little section here catches lots of people out. You've probably seen lots of people over-rotating the car to the right on corner entry because we're braking, it's downhill, we're turning right, and then there's a change of direction to the left. And here, you can see this little patch of grass on the left. That's what I use as my reference point. So just before this patch of grass there, we're going to be on the brakes, nice and smooth, not braking too hard. And as we approach this right turn, we're going to be releasing the brakes slightly. And we're not going to be braking too much. You can see how much we're braking there. Probably about 25, 30%. And then again, we're going to be braking harder for this section here. So the braking goes up to about 50% there. So this is almost like a double left. So you've got 1, 2. And it's the second one we need to hook up. We don't need to worry about the first apex. We want to avoid it if we can. Middle of the track. and pick up the second one. And again, watch for the curb on the right hand side as you exit. Be nice and patient on the throttle. And the run down to this, again, another tricky double left. So car over to the right hand side, right over as far as you can on the curb. And then just as the car's straight, we're going to be on the brakes earlier than you think for this turn, because the entry here is so important because it sets up the next left and the right. So, and you turn in earlier here than you think. So here you would normally think you'd be turning round here, but you're actually apexing this one earlier than you think, because the car will run out to the right hand side, right on the curb there actually. That's as close as you want to get to that. You don't really want to get any closer. So apex this one quite early. Car will move over to the right and then down into the dip for the run up the hill. Entry to this one, so important. I've overtook loads of people on the exit of this turn just because I sacrifice the entry and I think about the exit. And we're going uphill here, so you don't have to brake as hard as you would think. It's all about momentum. And there's a bit of a bump just over here. Then there's a compression just as we turn into the corner there. A great place to get on the gas. You can see there, I'm almost at 100% gas already there. So watch that little bump there, compression on the gas. And be careful of this curb on the left-hand side. In the compression, gas, let it run out wide, all the way down to the run for possibly the most important turn on the track. So here we're just going as fast as you can down here. Most cars you can take that pretty much flat out. This is what I use as my reference point. Between these two signs, we're going to be on the brakes. It was maybe slightly early there actually, so I'm applying the brake just as we are approaching this sign, but it's near enough, it's not far off. So roundabout just after that one, but before that one, we're going to be braking in a straight line. And the idea here is to apex this one quite late, but it is cambered all the way around on the inside here. But I think the exit here is far more important than keeping a higher minimum corner speed around this right turn. I actually missed that slightly there, but ideally you want to be hooking up this area here. Again, where it's cambered, where there's a bit of compression. Just there. There's a little dip there. That's the dip that you want to be in. So missed the first apex. Forget about this one. We're going to be getting it back for the second one. I completely missed that one there. But that's the idea. And then that sets you up for the run all the way up the hill. Because if you mess that up, you're going to be a sitting duck all the way up the hill. You're going uphill. Your car's going to be struggling against the aero, against gravity. And if somebody is behind you, well, they're going to have an easy time overtaking you in the slipstream. Or at least making it too wide up here where you don't really want to be going too wide. So let the car move over to the left, then we're going to be turning right, hitting that apex onto the right hand side here. And this piece of pavement, you can use this. A lot of people use all of this and scrape the barrier. I'm not brave enough to do that, but I use a bit of this pavement on the right hand side. In this car, or most cars, you've got to take a little bit of speed off. You can't take this flat out. Now I, again, think about the entry here, getting the car in the right position, and when I'm happy that it is, we can be back on the gas. Again, you can see there's a bit of a compression there. Use the curb, get the car set up for the exit, then we're on the gas flat out. Use that on exit if you need to, but get back on before the start of the grass. The next right, tricky because it's blind. You can see, well, I was going to say you can see. You can't see it. It's not there. But just as you approach the turn going over that crest, a little bit of brake, get off the gas, just to get the car set up. Avoiding that curb because it is a big one. You can see the height of that one. That's as close as you want to be getting to the curb. Then the run down to the start of the carousel section. Now I use this yellow paint on the road as my reference point here, and I want to be aiming kind of for this tree here. I want to straight line my braking, because if you look, the track actually moves to the left. So I'll position my car over to the right hand side, and then we're going to be turning left and straight lining the braking. See there, we just moved it left, straight line the braking all the way down here, heavy braking, nice tight line around these two. Not really much point in letting it drift wide. There's much more grip on the inside here. And then get on the gas for the run up to the carousel. Now, here, this is what I use as my reference point. This SHK, and then there's some white paint just after. This is where I start to brake, in between those two. And we're going to be braking in a straight line. And we're going to kind of throw it in to the carousel. You can see there, we don't enter the carousel here. We enter the carousel on the right, and then we throw it in. A lot of people use this. I chuck it in. And when it's in, we're just modulating the throttle and the brake, trying to carry as much speed as we possibly can. And here again, the exit is so important. In this car, it was quite easy because it's four-wheel drive. But as soon as you see the exit of the carousel approaching, you're on the gas. And there's a little jump on the exit there that you've got to be careful of as well. We're probably airborne here as well, I would imagine. Yeah. So we're airborne there. Be careful of that little bump, especially in a rear-wheel drive car. And if the car lands and you've got the gas on, it's a recipe for disaster. So, car nice and straight, and then flat out to my favourite section of the racetrack. I think this is called, is it Brunchen and Vipperman, this section. So, car over to the right. Very, very gentle round here. It's really easy to run wide on the exit of this left, although it is a really, really quick left. We're over 120 miles an hour there at that point. But there is a nice little bit of camber there on the left-hand side. Just feather the accelerator pedal just as you go around. You can see me probably making little adjustments there, you can see. And then over to the right-hand side, follow the white line all the way up there. And get as close to this curb on the right as you can. And you've got to sacrifice the entry here to gain it on the exit and the turn after that, because this whole section for a few turns from here flows. One flows into the other, and you mess this one up, you're going to struggle everywhere. So here we're going to apex this one really late, because we want the car again right over to the left-hand side. If we attack this corner here really hard, our car would end up here, which obviously is no good for this right turn. We need to open that up as much as we possibly can. And again, nice and gentle here. You can see the throttle there, 50%. We're just balancing the car, and we're going to use the curb on the left-hand side. A word of warning though here, if you're in a car with a bit of downforce, like I've mentioned, prototypes, F4, F3, whatever, it's really easy to bottom the car here. And if you bottom the car here, well, you're going to be spending the evening with these guys in the camper van, because the car won't turn and it will just go straight on. So here we're going to be off the curb, and we're going to be on the brakes, and we're going to be really patient as we go around this right-hander. Really patient. Wait for the second apex. There it is. So you've got this apex here, and then you've got the second apex here. First apex, second apex, in close succession. And then back on the gas. That curb's not too bad. You can run over this one a little bit, but just be careful. And then the run down, which is easily I keep doing that, which is easily my favourite few turns on the track. Car right over to the left. And again, we're going to sacrifice a little bit of speed through this right turn, just because we want the car over to the right. This is where you want to be approaching these left turns. And there's a curb on the left that you can drive right over there. I'm probably not over that enough. I could do with being over that turn a bit more. And the same with this one. That's where I want to be. I want to be right over these two curbs. So the first one, I missed it slightly. Again, be careful of cars that are quite low because you'll bottom the car out. So right over this left curb there, over the right. And we can see how much we're on the gas there. We're on it already. Car will run wide. And here, if this was a Formula car, that would have been curtains for us. We would have bottomed the car out. You can see this must have been very, very close to bottoming out, but we didn't because of the car we're in. And again here, nice and gentle on entry. Just thinking about getting the car nice and settled. You can see how early we're actually braking for this one. We're not even at the end of this little straight here. We're already braking, trying to set the car up for this right because we need the car balanced going over this crest. We don't want the car to be shifting weight from back to front. We want the car nice and settled because we want to hold a tight line all the way around here because as soon as we get over this crest, the car will just want to push wide. You can see there. And if you're not careful, you will be on here. And for this Eisbach, I don't know how you pronounce that, coming up to YouTube corner, you've got to brake earlier than you think for these two. We're going to hit both of the apexes, or try to. Take quite a bit of speed off. First apex, second apex, and again here. Nice and early on the brakes. And there's a horrible little bump here as we transition from left to right that you've got to be careful of. Just there. That little bump in the track, just here. Across there, that will catch you out if you're not careful. Little bump. Car will go really light there. So if you're applying the gas at that point, then there's a good chance that you'll spin out. So missing that curb on the right because it is quite high. You can use a little bit of this curb on the left-hand side. You can probably use a little bit more than I'm using there. Put your left tyres on there. That would be absolutely fine. And then a late apex for this one because we want the car as straight as we can so we can get on the gas as hard as we can on the exit. Another tricky turn coming up. Again, quite a late apex this one. Because again, we want the car. I missed that apex there. I braked just to get it back. I just released the brake a little bit too much. See there, I'm trail braking in and I've released it and then I'm back on just to get it back and then we're off again. So yeah, I should have held the brakes a little bit further round the corner there. I'm going to apex this one really late and get the car straight. And you can see what effect that had to my car there. We're right over there, but that's not an off track. You want to be using this curb on the exit. Ideally, my line should have been pointing up there and run straight over that curb. But we got away with that. Lost a bit of speed. Tricky turn here, nice and gentle. Round here, get the car set up. You don't want to be going wide because you'll hit this curb and it's game over. And it's really important that we stay on the track here because we want the car over to the left-hand side. And you can see here, there's a horrible jump there. Again, I'll try and show you. We're airborne there. And obviously when we're airborne, we can't steer, we can't brake, we can't accelerate, we can't do anything. Get rid of that. So what I tend to do is a little bit of brake just before, take a little bit of speed off, release the brake, and then brake again when we land. It's like 2 stages of braking, brake when we land. And you've got to take off more speed here than you think. Because the exit of this, again, is so important. So hit the first apex, get a bit of speed off, pick up the second apex. And if you do that right, this left is flat out. If we didn't hit this apex here, it would have compromised our speed around that left-hander. And then from that point, we're pretty much flat out. Another blind left here. We're going to be moving over to the left-hand side, feathering the throttle, especially in cars which aren't four-wheel drive, because the car's obviously going to go light at this point because we're going over a crest. And here, in this car, we've just got to manage the throttle, because if we don't, the car will just understeer with this fixed setup. We've just got to manage the throttle and keep the weight over the front of the car as best we can, really, just to keep the car pointing where we want it. So this is just flat out. And down here for this right-hander, you can see there's the end of the barrier with the red paint, and then there's the black piece of barrier there. That's where we're going to be braking, and we're going to be taking a nice tight line, ideally around this turn, because we want the car over to the right, again, to set up this left-hander, which again is very, very important. You can use this curb on the exit, but with all the curbs here at the Nordschleife, not too much, especially in a Formula car. So keep the car right over to the right-hand side, open up this left. And what I like to do here for the second carousel, I like to brake nice and gently and throw the car in and wait for the compression and then get on the gas. Now, and if you do that right, you can be full on the gas. The exit's nowhere near as tight as the first carousel. Get on the gas, and then it opens up nicely up to this double right before the dotting a hoer. Now, over to the left, get the car planted nice and settled early, because if you don't, one-way ticket to barrier central, this one, because there's a little crest here which will unsettle the car, and then there's another little crest just here. Probably doesn't pick it up very well. So a little crest here, then there's a little crest on the exit, which will just push the car wide. And it's really easy to get greedy there, and really easy to get greedy for the final turn. I would just rather get the car on the inside, get it nice and settled, and then get on the gas as early as you possibly can for the long run down the straight. Now, while we're going down the straight, I'll say that in slower cars, you might have heard me talk about the double draft. Well, the double draft is when somebody's behind you here, and I'm going to get overtaken here. Rear chase. I'm going to get overtaken here. But then the double draft is when I then pick up the draft for the second time and go for the overtake towards the end of the lap. So that's the double draft. Now, if I was going to try and overtake somebody here at the Nordschleife, going for position, we'll go on board with William. I would want to overtake just as we start to approach this hill, which is what he did. You can see there's an incline there as we're going up. That's when I'd want to go for the overtake. So I've got the maximum slipstream. He's going to be affected, the guy in front's going to be affected by the aero and now gravity. Well, at least I've got rid of one of those. And you can see how quickly he breezes by me here because we're going up the hill. And then down here, it's always a little bit sketchy, especially this right-hand turn here. Netcode corner, I like to call it. Whenever you go side by side here, netcode always seems to play a part for some reason, which is why I didn't actually go for a move on this occasion. I just backed out and let him have the position. It's not really worth the heartache if you crash after 3 laps. And there we go. That's the end. A little slide here. And that's the end of this little guide, tour, talk, whatever you want to call it. So there we go. That's a lap of the Nordschleife in the Audi 90 GTO. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, the reference points that I talk about in this replay driving the Audi 90, they're the same reference points that I use no matter what car I'm driving. And all the things I mentioned to look out for, it's the same for any car. But hopefully this video has helped somebody in some way to get around the Nordschleife. So if you did like this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a great week. See you later. Cheers.